Prologue. If you want to be happy, you must not fear the following truths, but confront them head on. 1. That we are always unhappy, and that our sadness, suffering, and fear have good reasons for existing. 2. That there is no real way to separate these feelings completely from ourselves. This epigraph is one of my favorite bits of writing, one I often go back to. Even in my most unbearably depressed moments, I could be laughing at a friend's joke, but still feel an emptiness in my heart, and then feel an emptiness in my stomach, which would make me go out to eat some tteokboki. What was wrong with me? I wasn't deathly depressed, but I wasn't happy either, floating instead in some feeling between the two. I suffered more because I had no idea that these contradictory feelings could and did coexist in many people. Why are we so bad at being honest about our feelings? Is it because we're so exhausted from living that we don't have the time to share them? I had an urge to find others who felt the way I did. So I decided, instead of aimlessly wandering in search of these others, to be the person they could look for. To hold my hand up and high and shout, I'm right here, hoping that somebody would see me waving, recognize themselves in me, and approach me, so we could find comfort in each other's existence. This book is a record of therapy I received for my dysthymia, or persistent depressive disorder, which is a state of constant or light depression. It's also full of personal and sometimes pathetic details, but I have tried to make it more than just venting of my dark emotions. I explore specific situations in my life, searching for the fundamental causes of my feelings so I can move in a healthier direction. I wonder about others like me, who seem totally fine on the outside but are rotting on the inside, where the rot is the vague state of being not fine and not devastated at the same time. The world tends to focus too much on very bright or very dark. Many of my own friends find my type of depression baffling. But what's an acceptable form of depression, anyways? Is depression itself something that can ever be fully understood? In the end, my hope is for people to read this book and think, I wasn't the only person who felt like this. Or I see now that people live with this. I've always thought that art is about moving hearts and minds. Art has given me faith that today may or may not have been perfect, but was still a pretty good day. Or faith that even after a long day of being depressed, I can still burst into laughter over something very small. I've always realized that revealing my darkness is just as natural a thing to do as revealing my light. Through my very personal practice of this art, I hope I can find my way into the hearts of others, just as this book has found its way into your hands. Chapter 1. Slightly Depressed. Classic signs such as hearing voices, intrusive thoughts, and self-harming aren't the only signs of depression. Just as light flu can make our whole body hurt, a light depression can make our minds ache all over. Ever since I was a child, I've been introverted and sensitive. The memories are vague now, but according to my old diary entries, I was clearly not a born optimist, and I would feel down from time to time. It was in high school when the depression really hit, which affected my studies, prevented me from going to college, and compromised my future. Perhaps it was a given that I would end up depressed as an adult. But even when I changed all the parts of my life that I wanted to change, my weight, my education, partner, friends, I was still depressed. I didn't always feel that way, but I would go in and out of funk that was inevitable as bad weather. I might go to bed happy and wake up sad and sullen. I couldn't keep food down when I was stressed, and I would cry constantly when I was ill. I simply gave in to the fact that I was someone who was depressed from birth and let my world grow darker and darker. My paranoia towards others grew worse, and my anxiety spiked around strangers. But I became expert at acting like all was well. And for the longest time, I kept pushing myself to be better, believing that I could get through my depression on my own. But it just got to be too much to bear at one point, and I finally decided to get help. I was nervous and afraid, but I finally tried to empty myself of expectations as I stepped into the consultation room. Psychiatrist. So, how can I help you? Me. Well, I think I'm slightly depressed. Should I go into more detail? Psychiatrist. I would appreciate that. Me. I take out my phone and read off the notes app. I compare myself to others too much and then scold myself accordingly. And I have low self esteem. Psychiatrist. Have you thought about what the cause of this behavior and low self esteem might be? Me. I think I have self esteem part comes from my upbringing. My mother would always bemoan how poor we were. We lived in a one bedroom apartment that was too small for five people. And there was another apartment complex in our neighborhood with the same name as ours that had bigger units. One time, a friend's mother asked me which complex we lived in, the smaller one or the bigger. And that made me ashamed of where we lived and nervous about revealing it to other people. Psychiatrist. Is there anything else you remember? Me. Oh, loads. It's such a cliche to put into words, but my father beat my mother. They have this euphemism for it now, martial disputes. But it's just violence, isn't it? When I think back on my childhood, my memories are full of my father beating my mother and my sisters and me, smashing up the apartment and leaving the house in the middle of the night. We would cry ourselves to sleep and in the morning leave the mess behind when we went to school. Psychiatrist. How did that make you feel? Me. Desperate? Sad? I felt like my family kept secrets I couldn't tell anyone. Secrets that kept growing bigger and bigger. I thought I had to hide it all. My older sister made sure I never spoke about what happened at home to people outside our family, and I made sure that my younger sister kept silent about the whole thing. Everything that happened at home was detrimental to my self esteem, but now I wonder if my older sister didn't have something to do with that as well. Psychiatrist. Do you mean your relationship with your older sister? Me. I suppose so. My sister's love was conditional. If I didn't do well at school, gained weight, or didn't apply myself to whatever I did, she would mock and humiliate me. She is a bit older than I am, which meant her word was law. There was money aspect as well because she bought us clothes and shoes and backpacks. She manipulated us with these bribes, saying she would take back everything she bought for us if we didn't listen to her. Psychiatrist. Did that make you feel you want to run away? Me. Of course, it seemed like such an abusive relationship. She was full of contradictions. For example, she could go on sleepovers, but I wasn't allowed. There were clothes she wouldn't let us wear, loads of things like that. But everything was so love hate with her. I hated her, but I was scared she would get mad at me and abandon me. Psychiatrist. Have you ever tried distancing yourself from that relationship? Me. Well, after I became an adult and started working part time, I made a decision to become financially independent from her. At least I did it little by little. Psychiatrist. What about mental independence? Me. That was hard. My sister's only friends were her boyfriend and me, because we were the only ones who would cater to her every whim. She once told me that she hated spending time with other people and that I was the only one she felt most comfortable with. That annoyed me so much for that first time. I said something to her. I said, I'm not comfortable at all with you. In fact, you make me very uncomfortable. Psychiatrist. What was her reaction? Me. She was shocked. Apparently, she spent the next few nights in tears. To this day, if we mention it, she cries. Psychiatrist. How did that seeing her react that way make you feel? Me. Touched, I guess, but relieved as well. I felt liberated. A little. Psychiatrist. So your self esteem didn't improve after breaking away from your older sister? Me. Sometimes I feel more confident about myself, but I think the general mood or depression continued. Like the thing I had depended on my sister for transfer to my partner. Psychiatrist. And how are your romantic relationships? Do your partners approach you first or are you more proactive? I'm not proactive at all. If I like someone, I just know they'll think I'm fair game and treat me horribly, which is why I don't even like to show them I like them. I've never told anyone I like them or flirted with anyone. My relationships are always passive. If somebody likes me, I go along with it for a while, and if that works out, we make it official. That's my pattern. Does this ever not become official? Me. It's almost always becomes official. When I go out with someone, it ends to be for the long term, and I end up depending heavily on them. My partners do take good care of me, but even when they understand me and make room for me, I feel frustrated. I don't want to be so dependent. I want to be self sufficient and be fine when I'm alone, but I keep thinking that would be impossible. Psychiatrist. What about your friendships? Me. I was very serious about friendships when I was little, like most children are. But after being bullied in elementary school and middle school, I think by the time I reached high school, I developed a fear of straying from the herd and was nervous about friendships in general. That fear was reflected in my romantic relationships, and I decided not to expect too much from my friends or friendships anymore. Psychiatrist. I see. Do you find your work satisfying? Me. Yes. I work in marketing for a publisher running their social media accounts. I create content and monitor exposure, things like that. The work is fun and I'm good fit for it. Psychiatrist. So you get good results? Me. I do. Which makes me want to work harder and that sometimes makes me stress about getting better results. Psychiatrist. I see. Thank you for being so candid and going into so much detail. We'll have to do some examinations, but you seem to have a tendency to be codependent. The extreme opposites of emotions tends to go hand in hand, which in this case means the more codependent you are, the more you don't want to be. For example, when you're codependent on your partner, you resent them. But when you leave your partner, you feel anxious and bereft. Perhaps you're codependent on your work as well. When you get good results, your worth is realized and you relax. But that satisfaction doesn't last long term. That's a problem. It's like you're running inside a hamster wheel. You try to get out of your depression through your efforts but fail. And this continuing cycle of trying and failing feeds back into the original depression. Me. I see. I'm actually consoled by these words and I feel like something is being seen clearly for the first time. Psychiatrist. You need to break out of this cycle and depression. Challenge yourself to do something you had never thought possible for you. Me. I don't even know where to start. Psychiatrist. It's only the beginning. You can start with something small. Me. Well, I also post fake things about my life on social media. It's not that I pretend to be happy, but I post things from books or landscapes or writing showing off how great my taste is. I'm trying to say, look at what a deep, cool person I am, and I judge other people. But who am I to judge them? I'm so odd, even to myself. Psychiatrist. It almost sounds like you want to become a perfect robot, someone with absolute standards. Me, exactly. When that's not even possible. Psychiatrist. This week I'm going to give you a survey, 500 questions on personality, symptoms, and behavior, and we'll use it to work out what kind of new challenge we can give you to break your cycle. Me. Alright. 1 week later. Psychiatrist. How have you been? Me. I was depressed until right before Memorial Day, but I have been feeling better since. There was something I didn't tell you the last time. When you said it sounded like I wanted to become a robot. I have this obsessive worry about not inconveniencing others. Ever since I began having high personal standards, for example, when I see someone speaking loudly on the bus because they're on the phone or something, it makes me really angry. Enough to want to strangle them. Not that I would ever actually do it. Psychiatrist, you must feel guilty about that. Me, I do. I feel so guilty about feeling that way and about staying silent. Sometimes at work, the sound of someone else typing drives me crazy. And once I flipped and told a noisy colleague to keep it down, I did feel better after that. Psychiatrist. But what kind of person would feel so terrible about not having asked someone being loud to be quiet? A person who is deliberately looking for ways to torture oneself, maybe. Most people are timid, but the self imposed pressure not to be timid makes you criticize yourself, even though you did speak out to 1 out of 10 times. Me. I want to speak out 10 of 10 times. Psychiatrist. Would that really make you happy? Because even if you did manage to speak out 10 out of 10 times, I don't think you'd suddenly think, look at me, I'm cured. For one thing, the reaction you get isn't going to be the same from every person. And even when you can accept that a stranger is in the wrong and you should move on, you're still deliberately making yourself responsible for correcting their behavior. Sometimes the best thing to do with people who would never listen to you in the first place is to avoid them altogether. To right every wrong you come across in the world would be an impossible endeavor for any person. You're just one person and you're putting too much of the weight of the world on you. Me. Why am I like this? Psychiatrist. Because you're a good person. Me. I do not agree with this statement. I once forced myself to litter and talk loudly on the phone while walking down the street, but it didn't make me feel good. I did feel a bit more liberated though. Psychiatrist. If it doesn't make you feel good, don't go out of your way to do it. Me. I know people have their complicated reasons for doing what they do and being how they are, but I find it so hard to tolerate. Psychiatrist. If we have a habit of judging people from a simplistic perspective, that perspective will eventually turn against ourselves. But it's also alright to be angry once in a while. For example, think of a person you admire and imagine what they would do in such a situation. Wouldn't they be angry as well? They'd find the situation intolerable too, wouldn't they? If the answer is yes, then allow yourself to be angry. I think you tend to focus too much on your ideas and pressure yourself by thinking, I have to be this kind of person. Even when those ideals are in fact taken from someone else and not from your own thoughts and experiences. And like you said, people are complicated. They may seem perfect on the outside, but they could be doing terrible things in the dark. You can put them on the pedestal and even end up disappointed by them. Instead of being disappointed, try thinking this way. They're living and breathing human beings too. This will make you more generous towards yourself. Me. I always think of myself as weak, and that everyone picks up on how weak I am. That no matter how intimidatingly I say something, they'll see right through me. I'm afraid that people will see me as pathetic. Psychiatrist. It's because of your anxiety. The moment you say something, you automatically think, how will this person view me? Won't they leave me? And that makes you anxious. Talking about this with them could help, but you have to realize that everyone reacts differently. You need to accept that different people will have different responses to the same conversation. Me. Okay. After you told me in our last session to try something new, I tried an acid perm. I like it, and my colleagues complimented me on it, which made me feel good. And that other thing you asked about my friends saying my best traits is my ability to empathize with others. Psychiatrist. Are you good at empathizing with others? Me. Yes, very. Which is why I sometimes hide it, because it can be a bit too much for people sometimes. Psychiatrist. I would like you not to give too much credit to what people say about you. The moment you set out to become more empathetic is the moment it becomes a core. That would result in your own empathy decreasing, if anything. It's good not to fake interest in things you're not interested in. Looking at the results of your survey, you seem prone to cognitive distortion. You tend to regard yourself as being worse off than you are, sometimes known as faking bad, where a person faking good is determined to feel they are better off than they are. Your results indicate you are more anxious and obsessive than depressed, and your anxieties are especially high concerning social relationships. You also tend to be passive in your views of women. You seem to think, my role in society is being a woman, that's why this is all I can be. You're blaming your circumstances instead of your personality, in other words. These are the most significant results. You're anxious and find it hard to function socially, and you tend to think you're much worse off than you are. Your experience, your state of feeling in a high subjective, extremely sensitive, and often depressing way. You think of your condition as highly unusual. Me. That sounds about right, but the idea that I'm actually normal is somehow even more weird to me. It makes me think I'm just being full of myself. Psychiatrist. Have you looked up dysthymia or persistent depressive disorder? What are your thoughts? Me. I did look it up. I've never seen a set of symptoms that fits me so perfectly. And reading up on it more, I felt sad. How awful it must have been for people in the past who suffered from it but didn't realize. Psychiatrist. Do you really have to worry about these hypothetical people? Me. Is it wrong to? Psychiatrist. There's no right or wrong here. It's just notable because there's really no end to worrying once you set your mind to it. If you shift your perspective from their past to your present, you could start perceiving your personal experiences in a more positive manner. From how sad they didn't realize this to how lucky it is that I realize it. In the past, you didn't know how to label your symptoms, but not now you know. That's a reason for relief, not for more suffering. Me. That's incredible. What's the reason for these dual emotions? Psychiatrist. It's like living with guilt. You want to strangle someone and then you automatically feel guilty about having had that thought. Your own anger turns you into a guilty person. There's a desire to punish yourself, shall we say? You have the superego that exerts control over you. A superego built not only from your own experiences but cobbled together from all sorts of things that you admire, creating an idealized version of yourself. But that idealized version of yourself is, in the end, only an ideal. It's not who you actually are, it's only keeping failing you to meet that ideal in the real world. And then you punish yourself. If you have a strict superego, the act of being punished eventually becomes gratifying. For example, if you're suspicious of the love you're receiving and so act until your partner lashes out and leaves you, you feel the relief. You eventually become controlled more by imaginary outside forces than anything that is actually you. Me. I see. What about how I like being alone but also hate being alone? Psychiatrist. Isn't that just normal? Me. It is? Psychiatrist. Of course, the intensity of the feeling is different from everyone, but everyone does this feel this way to some extent. We need to live with others in a society, but we need our own space too. It's natural for these contradictory feelings to coexist. Me. Do you think I have low self esteem? Psychiatrist. Extremes tend to connect. For example, people who appear arrogant tend to have low self esteem. They keep trying to get others to look up to them, but if someone has high self esteem, they don't really care what other people think about them. Me. This is a way of saying I have low self esteem. When I think back on things I have done, it all seems pitiful and pathetic. Psychiatrist. That might be because you've often behaved not how you wanted to, but rather out of the sense of obligation or according to the standards you've invented. Me. I'm also obsessive about my looks. There was a time I would never leave the house without makeup or thought that no one would look at me if I gained weight. Psychiatrist. It's not about your looks themselves that generate your obsessiveness. It's about you have this idealized version of yourself in your head that you're so obsessed with your looks. You have made this idealized version very specific and unattainable, which is why you might think things like, I'm a failure if I weigh over 8 stone. The only thing to do here is to keep trying different things little by little, trying to understand how much change is comfortable for you and what it is you really want. Once you understand what you like and how to reduce your anxiety, you will feel satisfaction. You will be able to accept or reject what others say about you. Me. Is my binge eating also relevant here? Psychiatrist. It is, because when your life satisfaction falls, it's natural to retreat into the primitive measures, and eating and sleeping happen to be our most intrinsic base measures. But the satisfaction from eating doesn't last very long. Exercise or outside projects can help there. Setting some type of long term goal, in other words. Me. Alright, I am going to start exercising again. Okay, let me tell you about Hedgehog's dilemma. Extremes tend to connect. For example, people who appear arrogant tend to have low self esteem. They keep trying to get others to look up to them. The contradictory state of longing for intimacy but also wanting to keep others at arm's length is called Hedgehog's dilemma. I have always wanted to be alone, yet always hated being alone. They say it's because I have strong codependent tendencies. I feel stability when I depend on someone, but my resentment builds up. When I get out of the relationship, I feel free, but anxiety and emptiness soon follow. In every relationship I've had, I cling to my partner but also treat them harshly. The more I received from others, the more I'd get tired of them, and I'd hate myself for feeling this way. But then I'd go right back to being this cute girlfriend the moment my partner told me they like me. I know that within the safety of a relationship, I turn more and more into a coward, which is maybe why I find myself unable to quit my job. It's part and parcel of how I've lived my life so far. The important question is not whether this is the right or wrong way to live, but whether it's healthy for me to live like this. I know the answer, but it's so hard to act on it. I'm needlessly harsh towards myself, so I need comforting, someone who is on my side. Chapter 1 finishes.